Hello, this is Deborah Clay, author of The Borrowed Boy and Just Be, and presenter of Castaway Books. Each week I invite an author to tell me about the books that have inspired their life and influenced their writing. This week's guest is Winnifred Tataw. Hello, I'm delighted to be joined today by Winnifred Tataw, who I have got to know through social media, and I've been following her marvellous blog for at least a year because I was attracted, because Winnie, as she said I could call her, was doing some wonderful DIY with us. You could tell me more in a moment, that you started out your blog with demonstrations of craft work, which I watched as much to see you because you were so smiley and lovely in presenting. I was just thinking, oh, you gave me a lift. So
Thank you.
That was my introduction to the wonderful Winnie. But Winnifred Tataw has written three. She's written more than three books, but there's The Lone Star Child. Now, I should have checked how to pronounce this. The Gods Scion series. Is it Gods Scion series?
Gods Scion.
Scion. I'm terrible at pronouncing things. I should have checked with you.
No, you're fine.
And you've written 2 books in that series with more to come, I hope.
Yes. It's now 3 in total that are published, and I'm working on the 4th.
Excellent. And although I must admit, I haven't read them myself, because viewers will know I've not got into reading fantasy yet, but that doesn't mean I say I never will, because it's just not something, I haven't touched my toes in there yet. If I did, yours would be the one to read. But I know from the social media how well received they are. And I know that you've got many fans and they always look forward to the next book coming out. So there'll be viewers and certainly your fans who'll be watching this who will enjoy that genre. So it's really good to have different genres represented and not just all women's fiction, which is my favourite one. So welcome to my island, Winnie.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. And should we go straight in with your first book?
Yes, of course. So my first book, excuse me, do you mean my first book I'm reading, or my first book I've written?
Oh no, your first book on the island. The first book taken away with you on the island.
Okay, my first book on the island is The Witches by Roald Dahl. I used to love reading his books as a kid. My mother was in the military, so we moved a lot. And when I was really young, around elementary school age, we moved to Germany. So we were in Europe. So his books, of course, are really a lot more popular over there than they are in the States. So a lot of our library books were his books, and The Witches were one of the really big books that kind of spoke to my interest in literature. I just loved like his imagination and how he created characters, and how it was like the first time I read books where like the parents weren't the good guys, or the adults weren't always the best of people. So it was interesting. I was like, whoa, I didn't know that like adults could be bad. So, and like kids could be the heroes. They're not always like the mischievous ones. Sometimes adults can be mischievous too. So I really love just reading The Witches, and of course I love the original movie. I haven't watched the reboot yet, but I also love the original movie, and just really seeing how he could create different worlds and styles in his writing.
I'm surprised that Roald Dahl isn't popular or so well known in the States. I just assumed he was a national phenomenon.
Yes, he's more known
international. Go on.
Yes, he's more known through the movies. I think more people hear like Matilda, The Witches, James and is it Giant Peach? If I'm not mistaken. More people have watched the movies than they've read the actual books. But and The Big Friendly Giant, I love that book too. But most of the time it's more like we are more like, oh, we watch the movies than we actually read the books. Um, but yeah, so when I came back, I was surprised. I was like, where are all the Roald Dahl books? And they're like, oh, we have like a few. And I'm like, no, I mean like these ones and these ones. So he's known, but he's not as popular, I would say, especially now than maybe he was like a couple of decades or years back.
They're great stories. Wonderful.
Yes.
Interesting. Your mum was in the military. What does she do in the military?
So my mom specifically was in the army, and she did anything from she retired as a drill sergeant. So she usually when I tell people that they're like, "Oh wow, so she was strict." I was like, "Well, yeah, she had her moments." But she worked with infantry and just a lot with soldiers on more of the I wouldn't be the best person to describe it, but more of like the not businessy side, but like infantry restocking. Um, and that's kind of what she does now too. Is she now works for the federal government, and that's what she does with supplies and ordering stuff and things like that. So that's her realm.
What's a great role model to have a strong, independent woman for your mother?
Yes, yes, she's great.
Well, she obviously was a very good mother because she's raised a beautiful daughter.
Oh, thank you.
So have you got siblings?
Yes, I have one brother. He's younger than me. He just started college, so excited for him.
Am I right in thinking you've recently, you started college as well recently, didn't you? Or you were working your way through it? I seem to remember
Yes, this
social media saying you'd finished a first year or something. Am I right?
yes. So I messed up instead of saying last year, I put first year. So
Mm.
I'm starting my first year. This will be my last year in college. So I graduate in 2022.
Ah, and I don't know how you find time to do all the things you do with your college, your blog, your writing, your craft work. You're a very busy woman.
Yes, I don't know why. I always say like if I don't have something to do, I'll find something to do, and I've now found everything to do. So I never have time to just sit. I like to always be on the go and be doing stuff. I do have time where I have like breaks, like I did like the beginning of the this month of August. I did take a break, and then I just after that started going again.
And are you writing at the moment? Are you working on a novel? Are you between novels?
Right now, I'm editing the fourth book in the Gods Scion series. So it's written, it just needs its polishing and cleanups.
You're very productive the way that you get those novels out as well. Beautiful, beautiful covers they have. With your covers,
Thank
do
you.
you design them yourself or have you got a cover designer?
I tried designing them myself and it did not work out. I realized that I'm better with like traditional art, painting, drawing than I am with digital art. I still dabble in it, but I'm not that I'm not that's not my realm of expertise. So I do have a book cover artist.
With the beautiful covers. Who's your book cover artist? Perhaps you should tell everyone.
Her name is Alarm, and I don't want to say her last name wrong, but I think it's Callinger. I do know she is based in the UK as well. Um, but she does, I love her covers and she always does a great job. And she just helped me with, of course, the fourth book cover. So can't wait to show everyone that in a couple of months.
Excellent. Look forward to that. So shall we go on to the second book on your list?
Yes. So the second book is called The Giver by Lois Lowry. And I read this book around the age of 11, 12, so middle school. And I fell in love with it. We read it in school as one of our books for the year. And after that, I begged my mom, I was like, can I please buy this? She was like, yeah, sure. So I got that's when Kindles was really like the big rave. So I got it on my Kindle and I reread the book and loved it all over again. Um, it just amazed me how creative and spectacular the storyline was. And it really is what I believe started to push me towards writing. Um, I had never read something that was, I mean, I read creative books, but just, I don't want to spoil anything, but how certain like senses, like your five senses were talked about, and how like this dystopia world. I never read a dystopia world before, or a utopia, and just reading it and reading how creative you could be with writing. Like I was like, like as a kid, I was like, whoa, like this is amazing. I didn't know you could do all of this. So once I read The Giver, I started reading more. Like I started finding out there were more books like this, and really started getting into it, into writing and reading more like fantasy based books.
So how old were you then when you had the aspiration to write?
I would say I've always written when I was younger, but to start writing seriously, I was around 11 or 12. Before that, I had maybe written like little poems or like stories for school. I always loved English, so I was always writing like long, like English papers for classes. But I think about 11 or 12 is when I really started to write.
That's very young.
Yeah.
How old were you when you completed your first novel?
I was around 17.
Wow.
Um, so I completed it. It wasn't published yet, but that's when it was completed. Um, and it was again with my both my parents were I was doing a lot more storytelling. So since I was a kid, I always would like tell stories. But my parents were like, why don't you, put this on paper? Like start actually physically writing this, not just, sometimes I would write like a sticky note or like maybe a page and then go leave it. But they're like, no, you could do a book. And I was like, I think I can. I'll try it. So I did try it and I loved it and I just took off from there.
A great parenting though to encourage you and support you like that.
Yes, my parents, I always tell them, and anyone I meet, they're my biggest cheerleaders, my biggest fans. Anything and everything I do, they're like, yes, good, you got it. You got this, you're great.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. So how old were you then when you were reading the Giver? You said about 11, 12, you say. So you were
Yes,
still at school. Yeah. Where were you living
yes.
then?
So we had by then had moved back to the States, and we were in Virginia. If I'm, no, 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 we were in Kentucky, Tennessee area when I was about that age. So we had moved back. We were first in Virginia, which is on the coast, and then we moved a little inland to Tennessee, Kentucky area. And that's where I spent my middle school years. And then we finally moved to South Carolina when I went to high school.
Ah, and did you have a preference for one of the state over another?
No, I think every state kind of has its own pros and cons. Every place, like I have memorable memories of like what I did there or how it shaped me. I know for Virginia really helped me push with my creative side. They had all these different arts, like they had this giant uh center for kids, a boys and girls club. So they had a big arts and crafts room where we could sew, we could paint, we could draw, make clay, jewelry. So that like really pushed me. I was like, whoa, I could do all these things. So that's really where I picked up on doing more. I had always been artistic, but like I started to really hone in on like what I really loved in arts and crafts. And then moving to Tennessee, Kentucky is when I really started with my writing journey, and being more proactive in that and reading more too. And then South Carolina is when I started to on the business marketing aspects of things. So that's kind of how everything kind of just wrapped up for me. in a nice little bow.
That's interesting, the way different environments brought out different things in you. And was that because of the different situations you found yourself in and the people around you as much as the location?
I think it's probably both. I know for like Tennessee, Kentucky, the area we were in was a lot of farmland. So it kind of, if you wanted to go do something fun, it took at least like 2 hour drives. And my parents, they worked, so they couldn't always like go and take us out. Or if we were at our Boys and Girls Club, we couldn't always like they would do stuff around. So if you're bored on a summer's day, you read. Or Virginia, we had a lot of stuff to do, and it was a lot of creative things and interesting things we could do because we were closer to the city. So there's a lot of arts and crafts we could do, a lot of nature and history we could learn about. And then here, when I came to um, South Carolina, I got into one of their business programs and clubs at school, and we would travel and learning about marketing and sales and different aspects of business and different like how the different systems of agriculture works in our state. So just the area and the people kind of mesh together and how like certain things shaped certain parts of my life.
It's wonderful that you got the opportunity to learn about marketing as an author because that's
Yeah.
something that we all need.
Yes.
And is that the college course you're doing now, business and marketing?
It's part. So my major is studio art, then I minor in communication and marketing. Um, I wanted to take on I wanted to take on creative writing, but I was like, I can't. My advisor's like, you're doing too much already. I was like, okay, I'll calm down.
Your
But
advisor,
I've
your
yeah,
advisor, your advisor doesn't know the power of Winnie.
yeah. I'm happy I did listen to them because now I have more free time, and of course I can just still take classes in creative writing, and I did love marketing. I've always loved it. I would have made it a second major, but I had to do more math, and math is not my forte, so I decided to just keep it as a minor. Um, but yes, so those are my three core um, studies in school right now.
Excellent, excellent. So, shall we go on to your third book?
Yes.
Just going to
So
adjust.
my third book, oh,
Sorry, just adjusting my light. Go on. Sorry.
okay. So my third book is Cinder by Marissa Meir. I believe I'm saying her last name wrong. I'm sorry, Marissa. But it's I basically a loose retelling of Cinderella, a Cinderella story. And before that, I didn't really know you could take other works and like reinvent them. I had seen maybe like like on TV shows they'll like reenact like a old story on like a TV show, like on a series or for an episode. But I didn't know books could do it and really expand on it. So reading Cinder, I read it at my library, and this was still when we were in Tennessee. Read it at my library, and I was like, "Whoa, this is cool!" Like she really changed up like my perspective on fairy tales because I thought it was all just like this beautiful magical princesses. The Disney way of looking at it. I didn't know like you could do more or reinvent this like already set in stone. Well, not set in stone, but already set like realm and fairy tale and put your own twist on it. So it was nice to really read that and see how you can take a simpler story and make it something grander.
Is that something I apologize for not knowing this from your books already, but is that something that you have experimented with in your writing?
Yes. So how I do it though, I all my books have elements of royalty. All of the characters are princesses and princes. Well, not all of them, but main characters. And I know usually for books I read, or and of course what we portray as princes and princesses are like these grand, beautiful, elegant, always perfect family. And my books go, nope, they have problems too, and they have issues, and they struggle with things. Um, and you get to see how these characters who supposedly are supposed to live the perfect lives really aren't living the perfect lives, and seeing how they struggle and how they have to keep this away from the public because they're supposed to be these personas of what is perfection and what is poise and just good, lucky, happy lives.
Absolutely. Goes back to as well to the witches with the parents and
Yes.
adults can be bad.
Yes. Oh yes, adults are very bad in my stories.
Do they come good, or does the good win at the end?
Usually, sometimes it takes a while. And sometimes people who start off good end up bad. Sometimes people who end up bad, no, usually people who end or start off bad usually end bad in my stories. But I usually try to switch. Sometimes you have people who, um, their morality, it's kind of like it's like, well, they did bad here, but they also did good at the end. So does that? We'll just like I think they're okay for now. We're just gonna put them at a maybe good, maybe bad. We'll put them even.
Like all of us, we're all a bit good and a bit bad, aren't we? No one's perfect, no one's
Yes,
bad.
yes, that's true.
I'm going to go straight to because your fourth book, because I want to pick up something around that book. So you introduce your fourth book because it leads in from what you were just saying.
Yes. So the Brothers Grimm's fairy tales, not all of them, but the most prominent ones we know, from Rapunzel, Sleeping Beauty, etc. Um, After I read Cinder, I got curious and I started reading and researching on YouTube and internet, like where did these fairy tales come from? Like who came up with this? And I stumbled upon the originals, which were by the Brothers Grimm. And it blew my mind how violent and scary these original stories were, especially that they were meant for children at that time too. And I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't know you could peck out people's eyes and and wear all these like dangerous clothing and like all this gore. And I as young adolescent, I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like it's not just like um it's not as again like the Disney fairy tale where it's a lot more softer and gentler, and they didn't show all the goriness of the original tellings, which I mean I know they won't do that, but that would be amazing if they ever did. um but reading those fairy tales as their original versions, which is what now we would consider more mature, especially for children, um it really it was interesting, and it really shaped how I storytell, and who I storytell for. So I at first thought like there was only a certain demographic and age group before Grimm's and Sitter. Oh, excuse me, before Grimm's and Cider Cinder. Goodness, I've been saying Cider. Um, Before those books, I didn't know like fairy tales could be for a mature audience. I didn't know that you could have the same elements and put it for young adults and put it for older people. I thought it was only something like after the age of 10, you have to now, it's just superheroes. You couldn't have like a fairy tale that's more mature, or have more mature aspects or themes. So it really got me back into like, because at then I was more just reading, I wasn't really writing. But I was reading a lot more, and it again changed my perspective on storytelling and um, I again started, I haven't mentioned it yet, but I do love history too. And that came from when we lived in Germany. And being able to visit like the old German castles and learn about like the dragons and coats of arms and things like that. So I'm really tied into like my love of history and just researching and learning and lore of different cultures. So it was a great time.
And to go back to that, I just want to pick up on the fairy tales because I find the fairy tales fascinating because of the archetypes in fairy tales, and they go
Yes.
through all storytelling, don't they? I mean, you have
Yes.
in Red Riding Hood, you have the quest to visit the grandmother, you have the heroine, the hero in Red Riding Hood, the innocent hero. You've got in Cinderella, who's the scapegoat. So you've got these very typical
Yes.
archetypes and the quests that they go on, the situations they're on. And if you picked those apart, and I bet there's some sort of there's theses that have been written on this somewhere, but if you pick that apart, you probably could apply that to every story that we ever
Yes.
read. The archetypal
Yes.
situations. Mm.
Yes. Which is again another thing I was so in awe by, that even though these stories may have like these archetypes, they can be told so differently. Like I said, like the Grimm's fairy tales retelling of Rapunzel versus Disney's telling of Rapunzel are it's the same story or same around the same story, but it's told so differently. Um, and I found that like amazing how you could change things like that and
Mm.
reinvent things, or how things can, like, you can have the same story but be telling it for different audiences.
Mm. And the same goes for myths and legends as well.
Mhm.
Greek mythology is another
Oh,
amazing
yes.
area. Mm.
Yes. Oh, I am a Greek mythology fan. I'm anything fantasy mythology, all of it. I love it. I used to get I remember too in Tennessee, my godmother actually gifted me one of my first mythology books, and it was a thick book. Like if I could compare it, it was thicker than the Bible. Just a thick book about just the beginning of Greek mythology, and everything to the very last story. And I've read that book like maybe four times, 4 or 5 times, probably more, because I always go back to it and get inspiration and reread and try to get reacquainted with things like that, with like the stories and the legends. So I love, again, love history, love mythology, love lore and fantasy in every aspect.
Mm. So I said I'd go back to it. You're living in Germany, must have had a real impact on you because all those beautiful castles. And it's like being in
Yes.
fairy tale land, some parts of it, aren't they?
Yes, it was great, especially as a young kid, just seeing that and letting your imagination really explode. Um, because I do now, of course, when I do write, a lot of my fantasy elements and how I describe castles and bridges and areas in my worlds, I do take from architecture of Europe and a lot from Asia and the Middle East and Africa. Well, pretty much everywhere, but um, I do have that sense of like making everything very vivid and bright and descriptive. So you can see the castle, like when I say you can see this castle, you can see this castle, and just being able to I would love to, when everything clears up again and it's safer, of course, take a trip back to Europe to really just castle jump, just go from place to place, just relearning and revisiting it all over again. It'd be great.
A place that left its impression on me because it reminded me so much of a fairyland was Estonia, Tallinn in Estonia.
Mm.
I visited there when I was on a cruise ship. It was a tour there, but it was just all sort of little turreted houses. Every building looked like it had been taken straight out of a fairy tale with little cobbled streets.
Yes.
Beautiful, really pretty.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, they are gorgeous.
Mm. Okay, so we go on to your fifth book.
Okay, so my fifth book is one that many know, The Hunger Games, by Susan Collins. This is when I was now this I had been told about the book around Virginia, but I never really when I well, let me say when I was younger. I was told like, oh, it's a great book, you should read it. I was like, I don't know. But then I did finally get around to reading the book, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is great. Um, Again, really pulling me back from the giver of the dystopian world, and young adult novels. And again, like knowing like your audience and having a different audience, and seeing there was I thought there was a gap between, you know, children's books and adult books. I then now I'm seeing that, oh, there all the books I've been reading are young adult books. And you know, I just never had a title. I was just like, oh, they're books for my age. But now I'm like, oh no, these books, it has a name, it's young adult novels. I was like, oh, okay. And with reading The Hunger Games, that was just great because it was during a time where I had a lot of family members who were getting sick, and some did pass. So I always use like my stories and writing and reading as a way of just like if I need to escape, you know, just going to that fantasy world just for even if it's a few moments or an hour or two. Um, and reading The Hunger Games was kind of my escape way, to just, you know, learning and reading and just entertaining myself and calming myself down. And I did love the world building, and really, oh, I was like, wow. I was like, I didn't know. Like, I had, of course, with The Giver read about world building, but I felt The Hunger Games had a more intricate level of world building than I was used to. And that's and now I'm like I'm a world building connoisseur because I love to build worlds and fantasy realms, and visiting places, and again with my love of traveling, and experiencing traveling. So it was, The Hunger Games has a very soft spot for me. I love it. It was a really great book, and yeah, everyone should read it.
How, how do the books compare to the films?
I when I watched the first the first film at I'm one of those people where if I read a book and then I go watch the film, I'm always comparing. I'm like, oh, that didn't happen, or wait a second, this didn't happen, or why didn't they do this? Like I'm retelling the whole book in my head. So I mean, the a movie's did fine. I'm always going to prefer a book over a movie. But I mean, there are some people who only read movies or read not read movies, but watch movies. So you know, that's their cup of tea. But I always am going to advise a book, be like, oh, the book is better because you know it's the original source material, so it can't get better than that.
Can you think of any film that has been better than the book? I'm struggling to think of one myself. I always think the book's better.
Oh no, I don't know. I think I wouldn't say it's better. Um, Maybe Harry Potter the first. I'm no, let me stop. I'm not a Harry Potter fan, but I would say from like other Harry Potter fans I had, you know, I know they say like the movies are pretty good with retelling the story, the books. So I think that they weren't better, but they're, you know, pretty good, pretty close. Um but I don't think I'm ever gonna see a movie do a book better than the book. You
No,
know, it's kind of like it's the original. It can't get better than that.
no. I'm not saying it's better than the book because it absolutely isn't, but there have been some wonderful adaptations of Jane Austen with some gorgeous,
Oh
gorgeous
yes.
heroes. And you can use your imagination, but sometimes seeing a gorgeous man on the screen does it in a way
Yes.
the book doesn't.
Yes. Yes. I think I've watched every movie adaptation of Pride and Prejudice known to man. From I think there was one with zombies. There was one that I really watched them all. And they all, again, all follow the same storyline, but all do their own different twists. Of course, I've read the book too. Book is of course always the best, but I do love, like you said, it's always nice to see some eye candy.
And on eye candy, Poldark. I read all the Poldark series when I was
Mm.
in my teens. I read all the Poldark before it was televised. But the recent adaptation, I don't know whether you had it. Did you have it with oh no, what is his name? His name always goes every time I try and bring his name to mind, it goes. Oh, it's my age. It's so frustrating when Jung's gone. But the
Yeah.
star of the last Poldark was so gorgeous. And they had lots of scenes where his shirt's off and he's in the mines and he's splashing himself with water. And it's like, oh.
Yeah.
But
I sometimes I'm like, this wasn't in the book, but I don't mind. It's fine. This is
I
this
did.
is fine with me.
I love the Winston Graham books of Poldark. I just couldn't wait to get my hands on the next book. So yeah, it was good. uh, so that was your last one, but just wanted to ask you. You're at college now, and you told us what you were doing. What are your plans for after college?
Well, my first plan is get a job. I'm going towards brand management. I do love, as again, I kind of always combine everything in my life together. So I do love branding for Wins Books, my site and blog. And once I really started doing that, I started taking more classes in school, and I was like, oh no, this is great. Like, this is awesome. I want to help other people brand their books, brand their your business. Like I always say, authors, it's a business, especially if you're an indie author. You're your own little small business. You need your own little brand, your cards, your social media, everything. I love just branding and marketing and those aspects. And of course, the future. Not now yet, but I will start selling my own art. I, it's always been a thing I wanted to do, but I coincidentally didn't have time to do that one thing. I had time for everything else, but that one has been the one in the back burner. But also doing that, and of course, just writing more books. And reading more books too, because I've been falling on that since I've been actually really busy with everything else.
Yeah, you can only do so much.
Hmm.
Your
Yes.
energy amazes me. Your physical energy.
Thank you.
And I'm sure you'll be, having even more behind you in terms of branding and marketing, because you're already doing a fantastic job. It can only get better. Interesting to watch you
Thank you.
and learn from you.
Thank you. Yes. I'm always happy to help.
You're good. In fact, you're really good with your blog. You've had so many different authors featured on your blog. You're very generous in supporting other authors. It's really good.
Yes. I have this whole you can never have too many books. You can never have too many paintings. Trust me, my parents would know my art is everywhere. Um, you can never, I just think there's room, I argue sometimes that maybe there's not room for everybody, but there's room for everybody. Um, and if not everyone, like you, like example you, Deborah, not everyone reads fantasy. And not all the authors I host on my blog are fantasy authors. And why should I just only host, there are other authors, there are other readers. Not everyone reads fantasy. Not everyone, there are some people who just want books for their kids, people who want life health books, people who want horror, paranormal, people who want just romance. So, being able to share or give a platform for these other authors so they can find new readers too. I love doing that. And of course, I get to meet all these extraordinary authors and learn more about their genres and hopefully, get to also, maybe I may take an interest in reading one of their books too. Just, I don't now. I don't know if I'll ever take interest in reading horror or paranormal books. I'm a very paranoid person, so I don't think I could do it. But it's always fun, especially around like Halloween time, to have those type of authors and just see their perspective on writing, because it's so different and it's so much fun to really just host these authors, meet these new writers, and learn their experiences too.
I think the writing community is wonderful. Since I got
Yes.
involved in it, which was only about from a year ago when I started as an indie author, but I've just met so many wonderful people like yourself. And I too, I feel that interviewing people on my Castaway Books is such a privilege because I get to meet such wonderful people. So it's great.
Yes, it is.
Now, one question left to ask you, and that is, what luxury would you like with you on the Castaway Island?
I would, that's a hard one because I want to say maybe a phone charger, because I read, I always have my phone with me, if I'm checking emails, if I'm sending emails, if I'm doing something with the blog, if I need to edit something real quick. And then of course I also have all my Kindle books on my phone too. So just to make sure, like if I don't have physical books, I have them online. I can charge my phone. Hopefully I have Wi-Fi too to do this, but charge my phone and I think that would be my luxury, just to have my phone so I can just, also let people know, hey, I'm here. I'm good. Just reading.
Excellent. So we won't lose you altogether. We can see you on Instagram on your island reading.
Yes, with my castle of books.
It sounds good to me. Well, thank you for joining me on my island. It was a pleasure talking to you and meeting you in almost real life, Winnie. Thank you.
Yes. You too. It's so great to sit down and talk with you. I had a fun time like strolling down memory lane again. And I think I almost rebought like a couple of these books, even though I have all of them. But it was just good to like just relive those fun memories and times. And just see like again, like after even talking about it out loud, I was like, wow, like everything just kind of connected dots for me, for my reading and writing journey. And it was just great to relive that. So thank you.
You're welcome. And links to the books that written by Winnie herself and all the books she recommended will, of course, be on my website. So thank you and goodbye.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this week's episode of Castaway Books. References for all of the books discussed in this show can be found on my website, which is www.abrakdeborah.wordpress.com. It's the letter K and then my name, Deborah, Deborah. So until next week, goodbye.